how much of my expensive electricity could this battery realistically replace? One question I've been getting quite a lot recently is whether you can have a home battery without solar panels, and more importantly, whether there's actually any point. Because most people still think a battery is just somewhere to put spare solar energy, but that's only one way of using it. A home battery can also charge from the grid when electricity is cheaper, store that energy, and then power your home later when the electricity is more expensive. So, instead of buying all of your electricity at the standard daytime rate, you can potentially buy a chunk of it overnight at a cheaper rate and use it throughout the day. Just imagine, electricity costs less overnight. The battery charges while you're asleep, and when you wake up and start using the kettle, the toaster, the washing machine, the television, and everything else, the house can draw energy from the battery instead of buying as much from the grid at the more expensive rate. That's known as load shifting, which sounds far more complicated than it actually is. You're basically buying electricity when it's cheap and using it when it isn't. But there are a few things you need to check before assuming that sticking a battery on the wall will instantly cut your bills in half. The first is whether you can access a suitable time of use tariff. The difference between the cheap charging rate and the normal rate needs to be large enough to create a worthwhile saving. Tariffs change, and the best option will depend on your supplier, your meter, and how you use electricity. So you need to take a look at actual rates available to you rather than relying on an example you saw online 6 months ago. The second thing is how much electricity your home uses. If you use very little electricity, the savings may be fairly modest because there simply isn't much expensive electricity to replace. But if you have a higher usage, work from home, own an electric vehicle, use an electric heating, or have a busy household, then there may be much more energy that can be shifted onto a cheaper rate. The third thing is battery size. You want enough capacity to cover a useful portion of your daytime and evening consumption, but it still needs to make sense for the property. Let's say you charge the battery overnight and then use it during breakfast, throughout the day and into the evening. If the battery regularly empties before the cheap charging period, that shows it's doing a useful job. You're cycling energy through it instead of leaving most of the capacity unused. There's also the question of power output. Capacity tells you how much energy the battery can store, but output tells you how much electricity it can supply at any particular moment. Some battery systems can provide backup power, but it isn't automatic with every installation. The right equipment and electrical setup need to be included. So if keeping the fridge, lights, internet, and medical equipment running is important to you, say that before the system is designed. Don't assume every battery automatically keeps the whole house running when the grid goes down. And then there's solar. You might install a battery now and add solar panels later, or you might already be planning both. Once solar is added, the battery can store spare daytime generation as well as charging cheaply from the grid when needed. This gives the system more flexibility across the year. During brighter months, you may charge largely from solar, while during winter, cheap overnight charging may do more of the work. The battery doesn't have to operate in exactly the same way every day of the year. A well-configured system can adapt based on your tariff, expected solar generation, and energy usage. So, can a home battery make sense without solar panels? Yes. For the right household, particularly where there's a good difference between cheap and peak electricity rates and enough daily usage to take advantage of it. But the useful question isn't simply, should I buy a battery? It's, how much of my expensive electricity could this battery realistically replace? That's the number I'd want someone to show me. I'd want to see my current usage, the available tariff, the battery's usable capacity, its output, the expected losses, and a realistic estimate of the annual saving. Not the best result on the sunniest day with the cheapest tariff that may not even be available to me. A home battery should have a clear job, whether that's reducing the amount of expensive grid electricity you buy, making better use of solar, providing backup power, or preparing the home for an electric car or heat pump. When the system is chosen around the job, battery storage starts to make a lot more sense. So yes, you can absolutely have a battery without solar, and depending on the way you use electricity, it may be doing far more than just waiting for some panels to turn up.